Hi, Sami.
Hi, Tim.
Welcome to the Couply Relationship Advice podcast.
I am so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. And for everyone listening, I'll give a quick intro to the wonderful Sami Wunder. She is a leading international dating and relationship coach who specializes in helping high achieving women attract and keep romantic love. And Sammy's magic is this, and I've been binging her content, so I can definitely speak to this. But it's teaching specifically women how to balance strong relationship boundaries, but also maintaining feminine energy. And you've helped thousands of people get married, and if they are married, also bring their relationships back from the brink of divorce, Sami, which is so cool. And also, you've been featured in Time, Glamour, BBC, so much more. And for people listening to, Sami is living in Germany with her husband and their two boys. And I'm thrilled to have you here, Sami. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to hear more a little bit about your journey and how you got into the fascinating and wonderful world of love.
I think two things. One was my own personal struggles with love, men, and relationships.
Mm,
I just couldn't figure out why, with being an attractive woman, being intelligent, being hardworking, being good hearted, why was it that I was having so many heartbreaking and negative experiences with men? And basically, when a man I thought was the one for me broke my heart, that brought me down to my knees and it made me self reflect and take personal responsibility for being the common denominator in all my failed dating and relationship experiences. And I think there was a difference between judging myself versus taking personal responsibility. So I wasn't judging myself. I wasn't saying I'm the root cause of all the problems that I face. I mean, of course, I dated some men who were not high value as well. But this was about me taking part for the 50% that is my part in the equation. And the things I learned after that heartbreak, for the year that followed, I went on a personal transformation journey. It changed my life, it opened my eyes, and within a year, I was dating wonderful men who were treating me so well. And Chris, my husband, proposed within 9 months, and we've been married for more than 10 years, and we have two beautiful boys. And he's not intimidated by my brains and my success, which is what, today I am teaching my clients all over the world, because I realized I wasn't the only woman who was having these struggles. I was surrounded by women who were intelligent, smart, wonderful human beings, and they were having very similar struggles. So I think my own personal journey was a huge part as to why I made a 180 career switch from being a trained economist and a master's in public policy to becoming a love coach for ambitious women. And I think second was just destiny sort of guiding you and taking you to where you belong, whether you know it or you don't, you like it or you don't. And I remember seeing this advertisement on Facebook saying, do you have a message you want to share with the world? And do you know that if you train as a coach, you can have the skills to share it in a professional way? And I was like, yes, I do. And I signed up for that training. I developed my own soulmate attraction and marriage healing process. And ever since then, there's been no looking back. We were a six-figure company in the first year, multi-six in the second, seven in the third. And I've built an eight-figure love coaching brand across 90 countries of the globe today and helped thousands of women experience the joy of love, passion, romance. And I am just so blessed to do what I do.
amazing. I think there's something very cool in the way that you said, look, I'm not beating myself up about this, but I am taking some serious ownership. And I'm going to take some ownership to make sure that I can change my path moving forward. I experienced something very similar in my relationship. When my relationship broke down, I did go through definitely a phase of feeling a little bit sorry for myself, but then I got really curious as to why this happened. Maybe there were things that I needed to learn and changes that I needed to make in myself, which is a very similar path, Sami. What are some of the things that you think people overlook about their role in dating dynamics and attracting the right person for them?
I think a lot of us go out looking for the perfect partner. We have a checklist. We say, here's what I want. He should earn this much. He should look like this. And I think the approach should be different. The approach should be, am I being the best version of myself? And the idea there is if you show up as, the best version of yourself, then you are going to attract a vibrational match for that. And I think a lot of us abdicate the personal responsibility on that part. We want somebody who is emotionally mature. We want somebody who is taking ownership of their life, their career. But we're not asking ourselves, am I showing up that way myself? And so I think if one were to step out into the world of dating or even within a long term relationship, I think the focus should always be, am I being the partner that my partner would love being with? Am I filled with that love, that respect, that passion for life, that passion for my career? Do I have something interesting to say? What mood am I bringing to the relationship? What mood am I bringing to the date? So my husband always says he got so lucky with me and he won the jackpot. And sometimes I wonder why. And I think it's because I pay so much attention to who I am being in the relationship instead of abdicating that responsibility of my man making me happy. And I think if more of us started to show up this way, where we asked ourselves, what am I bringing to the table, and really worked on that, I think we'll attract great partners and keep great relationships.
Do you think there's something specific around this high achieving personality type? Do you think there's specific challenges with people that do tend to go the extra mile, put their hand up for the extra thing, to be ultra aggressive in their careers and really push for the stars? What specific challenges does that personality type have in dating? And especially, why is that different perhaps for men and women?
Oh my God, I could talk about this forever. So I think when we're looking at high achievers, we're looking at the top 1 to 3% of the world population. Sometimes when I look at the clientele I work with, top C suite executives and high achieving entrepreneurs, these are really hardworking, ambitious, committed people. They're very disciplined about their goals. But of course, like any gift, you have a shadow side to that gift. Now, that shadow side for women could look like being too much in their masculine energy, which means, when you're in the boss babe and CEO mode, you're planning, you're being logistical, you're taking control, you're the boss, you know what you want, you are the smartest energy in the room. And when you take that energy to your dates and to your marriage or to your relationship, it actually, just like bluntly said, it's a very unpleasant, unattractive energy for a woman to embody, because a masculine man, a man who is embodied in his giving, in his doing, in his planning, in his leading, is going to experience you like a man in spirit. So you could be wearing a beautiful red dress, but you will still be experienced in your energy as a man, as basically being masculine. And that's going to push the right guys away. And these are the guys that you're actually attracted to. So in my case, this was happening so loud and so bold. And I have so much compassion for that version of myself. I didn't know better. I didn't know that there was anything like polarity in romantic relationships. I didn't know that there was anything like me embodying my feminine versus my masculine. And of course, once I understood that, it brought around a complete 180 transformation. So I would say masculine energy embodiment is a big one for high achievers. Another challenge for high achievers is just finding a vibrational match. I mean, look at the sample size we're dealing with. If you were to look at the population of Germany and you would say, Sami, Wunder, is a multi seven figure entrepreneur, I'm already in the top 1,000 people of the country. Now, of course, the top 100 is the billionaires, and I'm nowhere there, but I'm already dealing with a pool. If I wanted a man who is a vibrational match for me, I mean, what kind of a small pool am I dealing with? And this is not just my reality, this is the reality of many of the women I work with, which is, I've achieved so much, I am so capable, and now I'm looking for somebody who is even more capable and has achieved even more. So I think the right matching, networking, being in the right places, moving among the right people, networks is so important for this kind of woman. Now, for the men who are high achievers, I think it takes a very different and interesting turn. I think most of these men are ambitious and they're very embodied in their masculine. However, there could be that game playing happening because they are being eyed by all the women. So these men are very used to a lot of attention from a lot of women. And we don't hold it against them. But when you have that kind of choice and so many multiple options, it can lead to these men adopting more short term dating strategies versus long term dating strategies. So they're going to be spoiled for choice and they're going to date as many women as they can, bed as many women as they can, because dating then becomes about instant gratification versus about long-term partnership or seeking something long-term, which of course goes on to harm the top tier woman who is seeking this man. And this is why you will often notice very high achieving men and women at the top being single, which is
Mm.
ironical because when you look at them, you think they have everything. Why are they having such a hard time dating and finding the right person?
Can you talk more about what masculine and feminine energy is and how it doesn't necessarily need to be tied to your sex or gender? Because I think for some of the people listening here today, this might be the first time that they've heard of this whole concept.
Absolutely. So this was game changing for me to learn about. And I think where I would love to start is just helping people understand that your romantic relationships are not like your other relationships. Romantic relationships need that sexual spark, they need that romantic tension, that passion, and that stems from the presence of polar opposite energies in a romantic connection. Which means if I am showing up in my feminine, and I'll talk about what it is in just a moment, then I'm going to be sexually more responsive and attracted to a man who is embodied in his masculine. And the same for an embodied masculine man. So we need the presence of polar opposite energies in order for there to be a romantic and sexual spark and tension. Now, if you did not have this, let's say you had masculine and masculine energy together, which happens a lot when two high achievers come together. Both are in trying to be in control, both are fighting for the leadership. Then you just have a scenario where there's a lot of power struggle and head butting because there's no clear leadership happening. Now, you could also have a scenario where two feminine energy embodied individuals come together. They're both relaxed in their being, they both allow themselves to be led. And in that kind of equation, again, there will be connection and oxytocin, but nothing will get done because you don't have a masculine leadership partner in the relationship. Now, having understood this, I think it's very important to understand that masculine and feminine are not sexist terms. Both men and women have both masculine and feminine energy. And what we're talking about is, for some couples, it does work that the woman is more in her masculine and the man is more in his feminine. That's absolutely all right. So we're not talking about genders here. We're just saying, and we've just seen that men who like to do, give, are ambitious, are successful, make lots of money, they actually want to go home to a softer feminine presence. And women who are in their softer feminine presence love the presence of a masculine energy. And so, what we've seen over the years, and I've been doing this for nearly a decade now, is that my client, even when she is all out in her masculine at work, what she really craves is to go back home to a man who is embodied in his masculine, because she wants to be held and she wants to know that he's got her back. And in terms of what is masculine, what is feminine, so masculine is really that penetrative force in the universe, in nature. When you look at, the sperm running to the egg, the sperm is the masculine force, and the egg is the receiving force of that energy, of that sexual energy. And so when we look at the interaction of men and women, and we look at attraction and romantic relationships, we're also looking at men embodying their masculine, looking like, decisiveness, the ability to take initiative, the ability to call her, text her, the ability to take an emotional risk. The masculine takes the emotional risk because the masculine knows it can be rejected, it can be abandoned, it can, maybe she doesn't respond, maybe she doesn't like him. But the masculine will take that emotional risk for the feminine. And the feminine is really just that being energy, that receiving energy. M for mind, M for masculine. So when a man is, or a woman is very embodied in their masculine, they're going to use their mind a lot. They're going to be a lot in their head. Whereas feminine is more body embodied. It's more in my body, in my emotions, in my feelings. And I have the ability to receive, while the masculine has the ability to give. And of course, these are not like black and white concepts. In other words, these are flow concepts where, even in my marriage, I am the girl and I am the feminine embodied partner, but that doesn't mean when my kids come home, I don't have to get into masculine and do the mothering job. So I think sometimes we think it's only about leaning back and relaxing in your feminine. But I think the truth of life is that there is more of a dance and more of a flow. And, when you are in that romantic equation, when you're on a date, you want to be in your feminine. When you are with your husband and, having a tea at the end of the day, you want to be a receiving partner, a listening partner, versus the bulldozing and the, action taking, over giving partner.
And I think um, I think what's something that's so interesting here is around this idea of the things that you do in your work, or the behaviors that might make you successful in the workplace, won't necessarily make your relationship successful as well. So the things that are going to make you very successful in business, often we see those behaviors and we think, oh, this has actually helped me get very far in my life. I'm now going to apply this to my relationship, and then it doesn't work. In fact, it backfires. Um, that's something that I definitely have seen over and over again in my life and in the people around me as well. I know a lot of lawyers, they get very stubborn and will start arguing a point and don't want to admit that they're wrong, because legally, if you start admitting culpability, then you're responsible, your case is over and you're responsible for a lot of fines and your client's going to be in a lot of trouble. Now take that energy into your relationship, and it's not going to work. It's going to absolutely backfire.
It's going to destroy everything. I mean, when you look at Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In at Work, and if you try to apply that to dating, lean in love would look like texting the guy, calling the guy, chasing the guy, pursuing the guy, booking the date, paying the bill, and basically becoming the man, And yet, I think the lean in energy at work is so important. I have to lean in sometimes in business, even though I feel so afraid, if I'm honest, like my feminine being is afraid. What will, like, this feels so jarring. I feel so vulnerable, and still I'm going to get on that stage and I'm going to hold the mic and I'm going to speak to 100 people. I mean, that requires me to like be strong and lean in. Whereas my if I started to like just be strong and lean in, I would become a very difficult person to be with in my private life. And I
Mm.
would repeatedly headbutt with my husband. I would repeatedly end up in power struggles. I would only care about being right versus my relationship.
And I'm sure there are times as well when we also need to embody different energies. For example, there are going to be times when you talk about when your husband comes home and you're able to lean into your feminine But there's also probably going to be times where you need to unload and your husband needs to be emotionally mature, be asking you the questions, be taking some of the pressure off you, or times when you're not feeling great. But how does that play into the masculine and feminine? Um, how does that play into this polarity? Or is the polarity more around romance? And then when we get into our relationships, there's time where it's really important for a man to care for his partner, and that might be embodying more feminine energy. Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
That's a brilliant question. I'm so glad you asked. So I like to think of romantic relationships as like think of a bike. It has two tires. And the front tire is sexual attraction that is based on polarity, masculine, feminine. It's based on romance. And the tire that is in the back is friendship. And I think friendship is such a huge component of a long term happy relationship.
Hmm.
So, what we're talking now about is, my husband is a great friend to me. And there are times where we will not think about polarity, but we will just think about being a good friend to each other. So,
Hmm.
yes, of course, if I step out and I've had a hard day, or I've had a difficult client that I've dealt with, or, a difficult team situation, I don't care about masculine, feminine in that moment. I just care about somebody who can receive me with love, give me a hug, hear me out. And of course, that calls for emotional maturity on the part of my partner. And it also calls that my partner has done the work to not just be embodied in his masculine, but also be able to access his feminine. And this is why I don't always recommend, and I am sorry to any alpha male who's listening to this. I actually feel like sometimes when I talk to alpha males, they need to connect a little more with their feminine side. Because if you're just going to go in and just be this dominant alpha, I mean, it's great that you have the amazing car and lots of money in your bank account, but you would have a really hard time being a good friend to your girlfriend or your wife because you just can't seem to relate to her feelings. And a
Hmm.
man can't relate to a woman's feelings if he's not done the work to relate with his own feelings. And so I think this is more about being a good friend. And Chris and I are great friends to each other. And I sometimes also have to be in my masculine. He just recently had a wisdom tooth surgery and he was totally down. And within those 3 days, I recognized, oh my God, this man does so much for me. Because when he stops, it's like the whole engine falls apart. And now I have to do so much more in the household and I have to do so much more, picking up the kids from school and taking them to football. And I'm like, oh my God, you make my life so easy, honey. Get well soon. But I think it's a dance, and it's the dance between romance and friendship.
And I think this dance probably at the beginning of our relationship is a little bit more on the romance side. And then these friendship areas become way more important as you go, as you transition from the sparks, from the limerence into this longer term relationship. Are there things that couples can trip up because you've got really good at getting couples into a relationship, you've got good at helping them create attraction by understanding polarity, by getting their own life in order, but then once you have someone else board that boat and now you're on this journey together, what are some of the things that you see kind of trip people up after that?
I think boredom sets in. What I've noticed in Elevate, which is my signature program where we help women who are married and in relationships to have and create great relationships. What we find is that boredom can set in. Basically, you stop being curious about your partner and you feel like there is nothing new they can offer you. And then a lot of the time, what I find with my clients is that they're not cheating, they're not going out and sleeping around, but there is just a certain level of laxity that sort of starts to show up in the relationship, where she's like, yeah, he's just there, he's nice and he's just there. And it's
Mm.
not just a woman thing; it's also a man thing. Men also feel this way. Men. My guy friends have told me that I really love her, and we've been together 12 years now. And there's all these memories and there's all these experiences we've created together. But yeah, like the spark is missing. And I notice other women, I like their energy, I feel bad about it sometimes. So I think this is a very real conversation to be had in long term relationships. And I think not enough people are talking about it. I've had clients who've come and who've told me, I dreamt about my ex. And I was like, so what? It's just a dream. Oh, but in my dream, we made passionate love. And am I like a bad person? And I'm like, no, you're just human. You're just human. And I think what happens is, and how I like to explain this, Tim, is that we put a lot of pressure on one person to meet all our needs. And we
Mm.
have so many needs. And sometimes, as high achievers, we have even more complex and nuanced needs than, the rest of the population. This is not me being on a high horse. This is just me saying, I have experience with working with such people, and they're so complex, they're so nuanced in a good way, in a beautiful way. And then they put all this pressure on one person to be Batman, Spider-Man, He-Man, Daniel Craig, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. And it's like Elon Musk. And it's like, I like all of these energies, and they're all different types of masculine energy. Similarly, men can feel, I really love my girlfriend, but I like also her energy and I like her energy. And it's like, we then judge ourselves. And the truth is, there is a desire for variety. There is a desire. You don't have to cheat on your partner to have these thoughts. These thoughts are emerging because you have these needs. And what I like to tell my clients is that, firstly, don't judge yourself. Like, you're human. It's very normal to have these feelings and these thoughts. It's just a thought after all. And I think the important thing to understand is, in a long-term relationship, you start to see that, the two needs we have from our partner, they're very contradictory needs. So
Mm.
in a long-term relationship, you have the need for love, and love is fostered through intimacy. So, when Chris and I can talk all day, and we can tell each other our deepest secrets, and we can tell each other everything about everything under the sun, and he's seen me not just in a glamorous gown, but he's seen me in a, rugged t-shirt at night. That is love, that is intimacy. And intimacy is fostered through closeness and familiarity. Whereas, what is the second need that we have in a relationship? It's desire, and it's passion, and it's sparks. And what is the biggest enemy of desire and passion and sparks? It is familiarity.
Yeah.
And so now we're sitting there with two competing needs, where we're like, I want to feel love with this person. I want to know everything about them. I want to tell them everything. And at the same time, I want them to create enough mystery, enough intrigue, enough distance for me to actually desire them and, want to take them home again the way I used to want to do it in the beginning. And I think this is the paradox that we're dealing with in long term relationships, that has to be very intentionally and actively managed and worked upon.
Yeah, this challenge is a fascinating one because it's a true balance. You want the familiarity and you want your partner to be interested in getting to know you, because being with someone who is not interested in you and who isn't trying to explore your world is actually a really horrible feeling. But you also want that sense of mystery, that sense of polarity, the sense of almost trying to still capture their attention or be captured, and that kind of tension is really interesting and exciting for a relationship, but it's the polar opposite. So how do you get people, what things can you do, what ways can you build this in these longer term relationships to bring that spark back?
I think what's really worked for me in my marriage is just being a person outside of my marriage.
Yes.
And I think never using my marriage as the main source of my joy, the main source of my beauty and the validation, that every woman wants. I never use my marriage as the only source of that. So I have a huge and passionate and exciting life beyond it. And I feel like that makes me a very attractive partner to Chris. Like every single time I travel the world, I go to
Yeah.
London, I go to New York, I live my life. He literally can't stop texting me. And he'll find me if I don't respond on WhatsApp, he'll find me on Instagram. But he'll like keep texting me and he'll watch all my photos. And it's so interesting to watch how that distance from that same person that's like otherwise sleeping with you in a rugged t-shirt every night
Hmm.
is suddenly like so intriguing. And he's often given me the feedback that when you're living in your zone of passion, you are so sexy and you're so attractive. And I I wish that every couple or every person listening to this right now really registers this. It's not really about our partners, it's about us. And it's about us not being codependent on our partnership or our relationship, to ignite the fire within. I think if you have the fire within that you are expressing through other passions, through hobbies, through travels, through your work, I think you become so much more attractive to your partner. So, like, that is like number one, an identity beyond the relationship, which can be very easily lost over time, especially when we're looking at parenting and motherhood. So
Mm.
I remember when I had my first child, I thought my life was over. I felt like, oh my God, this is so unfair. Chris just looks the same. I look so different, like weight gain. Like 6 months in, he was like, honey, you need to go back to the gym. And he said it very lovingly and sweetly, but it was like all this pressure on me. I was breastfeeding a little baby. He would just go to work as normal. I was trying to, build my business. And then also I had like this pressure to get back my body. You gain weight. And I mean, naturally so, you're creating life. But it was like I had no life beyond the baby and work and just being a homie. And I remember like a year in, I felt like I'm gonna go nuts. I'm gonna either, destroy my marriage, or I'm going to start like, getting depressed. And I really need to get out and I need to reclaim myself. And, I went on this whole like postpartum, weight loss, getting myself back, getting my confidence back. And I think even in those dark moments, it was so helpful to have my business, have my passion, have that area where even if I was breastfeeding my son, I could still pick up the phone and post something and help somebody and answer a client. And that actually kept me alive during that time, because otherwise I was becoming so dependent on my husband coming back home giving me attention, and not really having that life outside my relationship. So I think that's really important. What is also really important, and this is so interesting, is to not become a partner pleaser,
Mm.
and to always remain authentic to your truth within a relationship, no matter how long you've been together, no matter how much you love them. I think this whole idea that you have to sacrifice what you want, or you have to say yes to something you don't want because you love somebody, I think is a very destructive idea that a lot of us carry inside of relationships.
Could you
And
talk more about what examples, for some examples for that? Sorry, Sammy, to interrupt. I'm really curious.
yes, absolutely. So, for example, I remember for my clients, I did this Bumble and Tinder experiment where for
Mm.
1 week I went on Bumble and Tinder. Just recently, I set up my own profile and I, chatted with lots of men. And basically, being 10 years married, I was totally out of touch with the process that my clients were going through. And they deeply appreciated that, I went and did all this work for them. And what was interesting was that I was just telling Chris, like, yeah, I'm going to go on Bumble, I'm going to go on Tinder, and, I'm going to like flirt with all these men and show my clients how to do it. And it worked so amazingly well. And then my husband suddenly looks at me and he goes, okay, and 1 week. And then I was like, what do you mean 1 week? I mean, I could run the experiment a little longer, like it doesn't hurt anyone. I'll just learn a little more. And he's like, 1 week. And it was so interesting for me how attracted I felt to him in that moment. Because what I was trying to do was test his boundaries and see if I can just be there, like not 7 days, but 10 days. And just like, yeah, just like, record these insights for my clients and, just like have a laugh and have a good time.
Yeah, like,
And my
this is for work.
husband,
This is very, very, very clearly for work.
it's for
I'm getting no, there is, I don't even want to do this. I really do not want to be swiping on these people. This is just for work. I have to.
and I really felt so much attraction for my husband when he said 1 week. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow. And I tried to push that boundary. I think it was a subconscious testing that I was doing. Like he loves me so much. Can I just sort of run with this for like
Mm.
8 days, not 7? And I think that is what I mean by you do not have to sacrifice your sense of self respect or what doesn't make you happy in the name of love. And I think it makes you so attractive to the opposite sex. So whenever I'm a very strong woman. I've done so much. I know so much. But whenever my man sets the boundaries and he says, honey, like this and not like this, I actually find him hotter. And I think so many men abdicate this part within themselves because they feel like they have to be a yes man in order to
Mm.
show their love to their partner. And of course, this goes both ways, men and women. I do think that, when Chris's ex wrote him on WhatsApp, I was like, why is she writing? And he was like, yeah, she's just asking for some childhood photographs and I'm just going to send them. I said, you're going to send them? You're going to like start talking to her? Like, this is the woman you were with for 5 years. And honey, I do not want you speaking with her. And of course, he also tests the boundaries and he also pushes a little bit. He's like, it's like ages ago. We have 2 kids. We're married. I'm like, yeah, but no. Yes, but no. And I think it's also him subconsciously testing, right? And when I stand up for my boundaries, and I don't abdicate my dignity or my self respect in the name of love, I think he finds me very hot. It's very turning on. So I think this people pleasing thing or partner pleasing is something one has to be really careful about because over time, I think we're all subconsciously testing our partners
Hmm.
because you have to think of it this way. You have to think of it as, you know, these are mating strategies. You want to constantly make sure you are with a mate who is valuable, who values themselves, who has self respect. And I think we're subconsciously testing that. And what happens over time is people subconsciously test each other, and the other party starts to really abdicate their boundaries,
Mm.
abdicate their truth. And without even realizing, the other party starts to lose respect and attraction for them. So if you want to maintain the spark and the passion, I think staying true to your principles and what you want is so powerful and so attractive.
I think what I've seen as well in relationships around me is that men can also sort of abdicate the emotional leading of the relationship to their female partner. And not just that, but almost the part of the family culture building relationship when they have kids. I noticed this a little bit with some of my friends where they're not actually aware of what their schedule is or what they're doing or what their kids' schedule is. They're just sort of taking it day by day and they're constantly asking their partner, oh, where is so and so? Where is this kid going today? Where is this kid going today? And then I found myself starting to reach out to their partner because I was trying to book time with my friend. And I was like, wow, now I'm giving more labor to the person that's doing the majority of it because they know more stuff. And it's like it becomes a horrible circle. Um, and I could see how that can be very challenging in a relationship too if you get used to just abdicating. Okay, my partner's gonna lead the kids schedule or my partner's leading the kids nutrition, but I'm like a supporter for it. Cool, but then how far are you gonna let that get away from you, because now you're starting to lose the reins. And in your partner's eyes, you're probably starting to just be seen as one of the children to also be managed and told what to do as well.
I think it's very convenience based. I think the more convenience we have in a relationship, the more codependent we are in the relationship,
Hmm.
and the less spark we have in the relationship. Because we start to see our partners as, the overgiving partner that we can free ride upon. And I think that is a very destructive energy to have in a relationship. So I never let
Hmm.
my husband have an easy time, just so you know. He's always on his toes. He's such a great dad. And I actually believe it's one of the secrets to having a fulfilling relationship because deep inside, you may not like to hear this, not you, but one may not want to hear this, but deep inside, we all want to find meaning and value and contribution in our relationships. And
Hmm.
the more that that lady or that wife or girlfriend is taking over, the less invested this man is in his own marriage, in his own kids, in his own relationship. So I really like it that my husband said, I'll put the kids to bed tonight. You have the podcast, and
Hmm.
then tomorrow it's on you. And of course, I want to again test if I can just give more to him. But no, that's not how it works. You have to stay invested in this thing that you're creating. And I think both parties should keep each other accountable for that investment.
I think one of the things that you've spoken about in this podcast, which is so fascinating to me, and it's kind of this tragic trap in which so many people out there become defined as a wife, or they become defined as their relationship, and they will put it on they put the day they got engaged on their Instagram bio, the day they got married, and then like they tag their partner who never has any photos on Instagram. It's always like the opposite person, but people almost define themselves solely
Mm.
by this. And then as their partner, I imagine that that's so much pressure because your partner's focus is on you and your relationship. And while that on paper looks like, oh, that makes sense to that makes logical sense that that is going to be a great relationship. Polarity, distance, the attraction comes from being close, but it comes from distance and being separate because it's like a fire, right? The question is, how can people get the spark back? And think of it like a fire. If you push it down with all wood and it's compressed with leaves and everything is so pushed down, it's not going to catch fire. It needs space, it needs room to breathe, and that's how the flames can grow.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is sovereignty and not being codependent. And I think this I see with a lot of my clients, and it's not their fault. I think this is how they think love should look
Mm.
like. But this hyper attachment to, I'm a woman who is with this man, and the whole world should
Mm.
know that this is my man. And now this man also has to post photos with me, and this man has to, proclaim to the world, which I think are all healthy signs if they come from a space of inspiration and joy versus obligation, right? Like
Mm.
nobody should be feeling obligated. I think this is again a paradox in romantic relationships because we feel that sense of obligation. Like I cannot tell you the number of people who work with me as my clients who post really happy photos of themselves on Instagram and Facebook, but they're having a really hard time in the background.
Mm.
And it's
Mm.
because this obligation energy that we have to look a certain way to the world and we have to appear a certain way. So often, like I think that construct, so much energy goes into presenting a construct to the public. If
Oh,
that energy was instead focused within on how can I again show up as the best possible partner, how can I be a sovereign being that is coming into this, the queen that comes together with a king because she wants to and he wants to and not because anybody's obligated to. I think that is so fiery and so passionate.
and this can be tough, especially with that high achiever personality type, because they want to do everything perfectly. And at work, if you've come up from school You do your grades perfectly, you get the great exam. You present yourself perfectly at work, you present yourself as indestructible, you get the promotion. You make a plan for something, and then you fulfill that plan, and then you're promoted, you're rewarded for it. And trying to bring that same energy into your relationship, unfortunately, smothers it. And then you end up in this horrible, tragic circle of desperately wanting your relationship to be perfect, so presenting it's perfect, and then that puts more pressure on the relationship, and then there's less desire, and then there's less intimacy, and then so to try and get it, you present and you start creating a very interesting tragic spiral, which I think we've explored really well today.
Absolutely. And, I just, what comes to mind is a quick story about a client who, we did the red dress tool with her. And basically, the red dress tool is, stop focusing on your man, stop dissecting and analyzing what he's saying, what he's doing, stop checking your phone if he's texted or not, and put on your red dress and go out and live your life. Wear your red lipstick. And it's so counterintuitive because when we feel like something is off or something is missing in our relationship, all our focus starts to go on the guy. And without even realizing, you are being even more in your masculine because now you are like that laser beam that is so hyper focused on him. And I always say, men have a bad reputation for not being intuitive and not feeling feelings. But my experience tells me the opposite. My experience tells me men can really feel your energy. So if you are that laser beam and you're highly focused on him, and you're highly focused on changing the relationship or making the relationship work, it actually backfires and makes him want to work lesser and lesser on the relationship because there's literally no gap. There is no gap. There is no room for him to work on the relationship because you've got the oars and you're rowing the boat and you want to make it work. And so the red dress is about stopping being the laser beam and starting to be the lighthouse. That woman that he first fell in love with a life of her own, with a passion of her own. And that creates that gap that then the masculine can come in and fill. I've literally had a client tell me in Elevate that her boyfriend said, I just wish sometimes you wouldn't want to work so hard on our relationship. And she was like, what? And he said, yes, it actually turns me off that you're so obsessed with our relationship and you're constantly wondering what I'm saying, what I'm doing. And, like, just leave me, like, give me some space, give me some distance. And I think this can feel so counterintuitive because women say, in Elevate, we are working on the relationship. But I'm telling them, you are working on the relationship, but you're working on the relationship by not working on the relationship. You're working on the relationship by working on yourself. You're working on the relationship by going back into your gorgeous feminine energy that is just naturally attractive if you could just allow it to flow through you versus putting all this attention and focus on the man.
Incredible. Sami, where can people find more about you?
I am all over the internet. Please come find me. You just have to spell my name right. SamiWunder, Sami Wunder. So it's the Wunder in German for Wonder. And you can come book a call with us if you'd like our support with acing polarity and masculine feminine in your relationship. And you can follow me on Instagram at Sami Wunder Coach and Sami Wunder Official. And just say hi and let me know you found me through the conversation with Tim.
And Sami, do you have a little something for the coupley audience?
Absolutely. So I know that most women listening to this right now have nailed their masculine energy, but it's the feminine energy that still feels like that elusive woo woo concept and you don't know how to apply it. So I have a 15-minute video training on 3 powerful feminine energy shifts you can make in your relationship as quickly as overnight in order to start having more connection, intimacy, and attraction with your partner. The link is going to be in the show notes.
I will have all of Sami's details below in the podcast notes. Guys, if you've been listening to this and you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Subscribe to this podcast. We're putting it on for you, bringing amazing guests like Sami here for you, trying to get these pearls of wisdom to help you build an incredible relationship that will last forever. So please do give the podcast a subscribe. If you can drop us a review, if you could drop us a review, it would mean the absolute world. But I just want to say to Sami, thank you so much. I have loved this conversation. I love your take on things. I've enjoyed your YouTube videos so much, and I've learned a ton both through your YouTube, through your Instagram, and from talking to you here today. So I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much, and I will make sure to write a review.
Thank you, Sami. Cheers.
Cheers.